So this just kind of came to my mind, but I was thinking about albums that are not necessarily bad. I wouldn't call them bad, but just some albums for me that never really clicked, as opposed to, a lot of people that say they are amazing, they're masterpieces, they're some of the finest recordings they've ever heard, or they felt a certain way hearing the album. But, whenever I put it on, I'm just really bored or just unengaged. And that's not to say, again, that it's bad music. It's just to preface that it's just not something for me. It's not something I prefer in music. So, if I mention a album on here that you like, then feel free to comment why you like the album, why it speaks to you, why it engages you, because, having more music that you like is always a big win. It's always a plus. So if I can enjoy these albums, that would be really great and beneficial. But for some reason, they just don't click for me. So I have 10 or so albums that I wanted to list on this particular video. And I got to this page on Rage Your Music just to kind of, mention some albums, some artists that I just can't really get into. These are not from the actual 10 that I chose, but just, random albums that I just came across here that also just don't really speak to me. For example, I guess the Danny Brown album also hasn't really clicked for me, but I do really like the project that he did with JPEG Mafia, Scaring the Host. I think that album is phenomenal. That's a really good hip hop album, one of my favorites. But one album that doesn't click for me is Sergeant Pepper's. I just don't really get the hype for it. Like, Rolling Stone says it's the greatest album of all time, and I put it on, and I'm just immediately bored by it. It just sounds like really pedestrian, old, outdated, kind of like pseudo psych rock. It doesn't sound that revolutionary. If you want like actual good psychedelic music, listen to Funkadelic. I think that band is phenomenal. I listen to like late era Ween. I like MGMT. Animal Collective, their first album, Spirit the Gone, Spirit They Vanished. I think that album is pretty great. So I think those albums are a lot more dense, a lot more experimental, and a lot more catchy and engaging to me. Whereas when I hear Sergeant Pepper's, I'm just really bored by it. I just don't get the hype for it. And most people that like this, I don't think they know any of those albums that I mentioned, because that's like Zoomer shit and Beatles is boomer shit. So I think that explains it. If you like the Beatles, you're just kind of a noob, I think. You just have to explore more music, in my opinion. But if you're perfectly fine with just knowing the Beatles, then, I respect that. I don't hate on people like that, but I just think it's really boring, predictable music to like. That's just my opinion. Miles Davis, I'm not a huge fan of Bitches Brew, for the albums that I can get into, but this is probably my favorite album of his in a silent way. I think it's pretty great. It's like a really relaxing, kind of smooth soul jazz listen. I quite like it. Another album that I can't really get into that I wanted to mention, yeah, the Bitches Brew, like I said, it's just way too all over the place and just kind of aimless to me. I do really like the album Naked City by John Zorn. I think that is a fantastic avant-garde jazz album with like some avant-prog bits. And Naked City, the band is actually like a grindcore band. So them playing with John Zorn, like an avant-garde jazz musician, it's mental, but it's so good. It's really great music, in my opinion. Miles Davis, great composer as well. I do really like Miles Davis as a composer, but Bitches Brew just never really clicked for me, so that's a reason for me giving it a mention. Also, television. I never was a huge fan of this. The riffs just sound really old and farty, so I couldn't really get into the production. The music itself is fine, but just the outdated sound and just the non-progression in the album just doesn't really engage me personally. Bob Dylan, I never was a huge fan of this guy. Just his voice and just how slow the music is, For example, I wouldn't say that, Dave Mustaine from Megadeth, I wouldn't say he is a great vocalist, but, when you listen to shit like Peace Cells and Rust in Peace, like that fast-paced shit where they're just jamming out with each other, and, then you get kind of like his nasally, raspy voice. It kind of works in that setting because the music is already like really rough and ugly and just kind of, it shreds. So having shitty vocals over that just kind of adds more noise to the whole thing, which can work in that context. But, Bob Dylan is just like a boring, slow folk artist that doesn't really get on, it's nothing like Rust in Peace. That's like day and night, not to say that that one style is better than the other. I just prefer that kind of trashy, all over the place style because it's more experimental and wild. It's just more energetic. It's just more my top speed. And this album, I think Bob Dylan is a worse vocalist somehow. Because Dave is pretty rough. He's worse, and his music is way slower, so I can't really like, it doesn't really get anything out of me because for example, in thrash music, nothing, if you really look at it, nothing is really better than Rust in Peace. So if you want like a good hit of thrash metal, then Rust in Peace is your best album to go because nothing is better than that album. If you want to say Master of Puppets or Ride the Lightning, that's basic bitch material. Me being kind of a trash elitist, but Rust in Peace is like a perfect album in that sense. The only thing that's shit about it are the vocals, which kind of work in that context, like I said. So it's the best option. But with Bob Dylan, there are so many different like kind of folk artists that you can listen to that are actually like they have good voices. Like the most obvious example is Nick Drake, who has a great voice. And his albums are shorter, they're more concise, they are more consistent, you can consistently enjoy them. So just listening to Highway 61 Revisited or any Bob Dylan album for that matter, I just don't understand. I don't get the hype for this guy. Great songwriter. I can appreciate whatever he's writing, but I'm not a person that is big into lyrics, so I couldn't give less of a shit if I tried. Swans. This is my favorite album from them because it's a bit more dense and experimental. But one album that is kind of obvious to mention here is To Be Kind, which I do not understand that style of music, that really like minimal kind of post rock sound. Like Godspeed You Blank Emperor. But Godspeed is like just quiet and like melancholic, so you can just enjoy it as an ambient album or something. But To Be Kind is like inconsistent. It's weird. It's kind of creepy sounding. So I'm kind of like, oh, so it's kind of like Have a Nice Life, but it doesn't have that cool like kind of shoegazy vibe that goth rock sounds like early Cure. Like it just doesn't have a cool sound. It just sounds weird and inconsistent. I'm just like, why do people like this kind of music? I don't understand. I'm not saying it's bad. I just don't understand why people gravitate towards Swans. I just don't understand personally. This is probably also an album that I could mention, but Donuts is good. I like Donuts. The album. The food is kind of processed garbage, but Donuts is good. It's just all the songs are too short, and the album sounds pretty aimless to me, pretty inconsistent, unfinished. If you want like a full sound of this kind of record, introducing. Do I need to say more? Introducing. It's like right there. It's the greatest thing ever put to music, in my opinion. It's fucking flawless. But that's as obvious as to say the sky is blue. Of course it is. Nirvana, also not a huge fan of them, but this is their best album. Talk Talk I also could never get into, so that's also an album that I just don't really gravitate towards, because it sounds really like out there and experimental, which I do like, but in post rock I like shit to be kind of condensed and quiet and peaceful, kind of like Godspeed, but just with a bit more oomph, with a bit more melody and passion, like Explosions in the Sky. I think is pretty good. Mogwai I like. My favorite at the moment is Indie Holiday, I believe. That they have maybe one album or two, but their most famous work is fantastic. I forgot the name of it for a bit, but it's already like one of my favorites. I don't even know the name of it. That's how good it is. It already convinced me I'm a fan. Yeah, The Doors, another Bob Dylan album. You get the point. Okay, so those were just some honorable mentions, 10 minutes in. But yeah, let's get into the actual list of 10 or so albums slash bands that I found that I just couldn't get into. So, the first one that I wanted to mention is Burial. And this might be a surprise because, this artist is so acclaimed. He is so like on top of the rank. Anything dubstep related, Burial is like the critics' darling. And this is basically, for people that don't understand like this meta hole of, critical music shit. This is basically like this guy kind of created dubstep. That's his whole thing, And I respect him for that. I think what he did is pretty innovative. So I was interested in checking him out because if you actually make or if you actually create a sound, like Sabbath created metal, something like that. Daft Punk popularized electronic music. Kraftwerk created electronic music, something like that. I wouldn't necessarily say those are like my favorite artists, but I have a lot of respect for them for creating a new sound, for inspiring a new generation after you, for to make and improve upon your blueprint. That's why I think those bands are great. But Burial, dubstep in and of itself is not a great sound in my opinion. And Burial himself, I just think he sounds really slow and kind of meandering in my opinion. I put on like Raver and it's just kind of the same sound and the same beat for 6 minutes long. I do like Etched Headplate, from this is all from Untrue by the way. I do put that on and I'm like, oh yeah, this kind of like switch beat that he has is kind of cool, but he doesn't really do anything with it. That's kind of the issue with Burial. Like, he has one sound that he likes to show off, and then he just puts a loop on that for 5 minutes long, and that's the whole song. So I'm kind of like, why do people like this guy? I did really try to get into him because, one of my influences, The Wonky Angle, cites this as like one of his favorite albums, and I'm like, shit, no, I have to like it, because that guy has impeccable electronic taste. Deep Cuts likes it, also an influence on me. Deep Cuts likes it. I'm like, so many people that I follow like this shit, and I'm like, I want to appreciate this. I appreciate it, I gave it like a 3.5. I appreciate it, but I just, it doesn't click for me. Like, there's nothing good in dubstep, and I stand by that. There's no good dubstep music. The closest thing I like is Knife Party, and I wouldn't say like that's great music, but Knife Party is like the continuation of a band that I actually really like, which is called Pendulum. And Pendulum is like this really like upbeat, like in your face kind of direct drum and bass band. And they essentially created modern dubstep, that sound that you load, like Skrillex and shit. Like that modern dubstep sound that you actually know. When you hear the term dubstep, you think of that. And that's what Knife Party created. And that's actually the artist that I like. Because when you hear that really in your face, like over the top kind of dubstep music, you can't go back to this. Like this is just kind of an idea or a sample of that. So why would you ever listen to this? That's at least my idea of it. But if you really like ambient, slow paced, kind of meandering, electronic music, then maybe you like this. This is probably really controversial to say, but I just don't understand. I'm not even sure how that Pendulum album is called again, but I think it was called Immersion. That's my favorite. That's the closest thing to dubstep that I like, that I'm actually really into. I'm not sure again. Immersion, yeah. There you go. I'm not a poser, I swear. I don't even think I can show this cover because it's like two naked people touching, but yeah, there you go. I mean, it has In Flames and Stephen Wilson on it, so of course I'm gonna like it, but and those songs are actually like god tier. They're amazing songs in my opinion. The Island is also great, especially part 2, Dusk. I really like that one. Witchcraft is great. Crush, Watercolor. I mean, this is like a greatest hits album. It's so good. I don't hope this video gets flagged for nudity or something because of the cover. I don't hope so, but yeah, Burial, he never really did it for me. What can I say? I kind of like the first Burial album, but even that is kind of repetitive. So I'm just kind of like, this ain't for me, Chief. This ain't for me. The next one is Cosmogramma by Flying Lotus. I'll keep it a bit more brief. And this one just didn't click at all. Like, I can't even really pick apart the songs because they all kind of blend into each other. The only song that I could kind of distinct is Zodiac Shit. And, that's the actual title of the song. With, Thundercat. I think Thundercat is a fantastic producer. That's why I kind of like it. But besides that, I just do not understand the hype for this album. It's kind of like Donuts in the sense of they're all like really short, aimless songs that sound unfinished, half baked, and they've just been put onto a album to enjoy. But I don't enjoy this personally. It just doesn't click for me. So that's the reason for me not getting into it. Good observation. The next one is metal, and this is Halloween. And this is probably really controversial to say as well because people love this album, Keeper of the Seven Keys. I just don't understand why people still listen to Halloween. It sounds really dated. It sounds really unfinished. It sounds kind of sloppy as well. I don't really like that this album sounds like it came out of the 40s or something. Like this album just sounds really dull and flat. This whole band pretty much sounds dull and flat. So you don't get that oomph in power metal that I like. And there's actually power metal that I do enjoy. I'll show you. I like Angra. Angra has a good punch to it. Camelot I quite like. They're pretty good. Gamma Ray, if I didn't already say that. Blind Guardian obviously is like the face of power metal, so I do like some Blind Guardian songs. And this album is fucking amazing. Death or Glory by Running Wild. This is like balls to the wall, just 24/7, just a constant hit of amazing power metal. Like this is 50 minutes long. Each song is better than the last one, and the final song is like a masterpiece. The Battle of Waterloo is some of the most epic fucking power metal you could ever listen to. So this album is fucking amazing. I love Running Wild, amazing band. But then you hear this and you're just kind of like, eh? This sounds 10 times weaker than that, or 100 times weaker in my eyes, but I just don't get it. And there is actual power metal that I really like I said. But Halloween, they just never really hit for me. Even I'm Alive, which I think is like a big hit single for them, I just don't understand. Goes pretty much for any Halloween album, but I think this is their most popular one, so I figured why not tackle it right. Then we have, honestly, any Arch Enemy, I would say, is not for me, but especially this one. This is just kind of one of those albums that is really liked by modern metalheads, and people would say in like Gothenburg metal, this is like their favorite band because it's the only one they know. But honestly, I have a band called Elovit, which has like Celtic folk elements in their music, and they also do this melodic death metal style. They are fucking great. Listen to Elovit. The Bible of Gothenburg, fucking At the Gates. Just listen to At the Gates, Slaughter of the Soul. That album demolishes this. What else do you got? The most consistent mellow death band is Dark Tranquility. I don't think they even have a bad album, so just pick any album and it will sound better than this. Early In Flames is pretty great, especially the Jester Race and Oracle. I think those are kind of like the two pillars of Melodeath in my eyes. Another band that I also really like is called Intestum Balsam. They are like a kind of like weird, grindy, sludge, black melodic death metal band. Yeah, they are all those things, trust me, and they sound fucking great. They are probably today my favorite melodic death metal band. In Flames has kind of worn out on me. I still have like the Jester Rage behind me, but that album is a bit worn out on me. But Intestine Balsam is still fucking great. So definitely listen to that. Of course, a classic Hard Work by Carcass is also pretty great. That's like that album kind of created melodic death metal, so why wouldn't you listen to that? That's just disrespectful at this point. And Edge of Sanity, obviously, Crimson 2 is my personal favorite. Just amazing melodic death metal. That's an amazing album, especially the second one in my opinion. Just the production and just the raw hit of metal death that you get, and it's actually heavy. That's what I really like about Edge of Sanity. So those are just some examples off the top of my head that I think are better than this. Why would you listen to Arch Enemy? It's the most predictable, the most samey sounding, the most unchallenging mellow death that you can listen to, in my opinion. It's just really boring. Like, I don't even want to trigger people with this. I'm just saying there's so much better melodic death metal out there. Just listen to what I just said. Just listen to all those bands and you will have a better band. It's not difficult, right? The next one that I want to talk about is... Yeah, I should have given you a warning for this one because this is probably the biggest horse I can tackle at this point. Ends from Up There from Black Country New Road. This is like, this album is like God sent, or like people adore this album. And I'm just kind of like, this album is slow paced. It's kind of meandering. It sounds, like I said, aimless. And that's kind of a current theme with me. Like, I'm kind of an impatient fucker that I just want a quick hit. You know, if you can see like my wall behind me, it's mostly like metal, trip hop, experimental music. I just want like a quick dopamine hit of like dense shit that affects me. And if music doesn't provide that for me, then I usually get bored and go to another band. That might explain my disconnect with this album and like with Bob Dylan. It's just not really my type of music, you know. I'm not saying this is objectively bad, like I said in the beginning. I just think it's not for me. And I wanted to preface that because a lot of people seem to like this, and I'm just kind of like, why is this so adored? I just don't get it. I just put on like random tracks, you know, in not a specific order, and it sounds kind of like slow paced. The instruments sound a bit muffled. The acoustics, they don't really engage me. They don't really sound crisp, or they hit me. And the vocalist of this band is like really nasally and annoying. He's like a modern day Bob Dylan, but he just sounds raspier, or like more like he has a higher squeal or something. I just really do not vibe with this vocalist. I really don't. And to kind of go back to the thrash metal, or like just the metal in general. Like, if people sing shitty in that genre, like I know this dude's, I don't know the name of him specifically, but like the lead singer of Haggard. Haggard is like this really weird symphonic metal band. And there are these moments where he just kind of growls, and it sounds like Cookie Monster, like drowning in syrup or something. It sounds really bad. Yeah, that's not really a good example, I guess. Yeah, the Dave Mustaine thing fits better because it just goes better over thrash metal than, as to say, slow, boring, tedious post-rock music. As to this, but the Haggard guy, he was not great as well, but it fits better with the metal team. And if you listen long enough to Haggard, you get some really epic, like crushing symphonic breakdowns, which are pretty great. So that's kind of the payoff with Haggard. You have to listen to some shit, but then you get like an actual great reward after a while. But this album just is consistently slow, consistently meticulous, just really specifically. It caters to like a post rock or like a chamber, like an indie crowd. And every time I hear it, I'm just really annoyed by how this album sounds. It sounds really tedious and just what's the word here? Just annoying, I guess. It's just really slow, annoying, boring, pretentious music that I just don't understand why people like it. And this album cover is pretty shit. Like a toy plane in a plastic bag. What does that even mean? Ends from up there. Ends from up where? Where the fuck are the ends? This is a plane in a fucking in a toy case. Like what the fuck? Like the title and the cover, they don't correlate with each other. And it probably makes sense in the album context and if you get the concept of whatever they're saying here, but when you just look at this, I'm just really confused as an outsider. And whenever you have new people discovering your music, it doesn't have to perfectly make sense, but you at least want to give them a good idea, like give them a good presentation about your music, so that people can engage with it, with maybe the sleeve fold, or maybe the cover, or maybe like the name or the album title. People can like kind of speculate about that. But I just see the title and the cover, and they don't correlate to each other. Ends from up there and a plane in a bag. Like, are the ends on the plane? It just confuses me. I don't get it. Like, call me minus 20 IQ or something, but it doesn't make sense. It looks like shit. The singer sounds like shit. This album is insufferable to me. Like I find this band and this fan base insufferable. Like everyone will probably flame me in the comments if I get like black country fans, but I just really do not understand this album. It's like a modern day. Well, let's not spoil it yet because it's the most obvious one of this video. But this is a modern one that I just do not understand. If someone wants to explain it to me, please do. Yeah, then we have kind of an obvious one, Bob Dylan. Like I think I already said my piece in like the mentions thing, because maybe I have like 11 picks, and I think that Bob Dylan was one that I wanted to click away before this video, and I didn't. So I'll do that now because most of the things that I said, I already said at like the beginning of the video, so there's no real need to talk about them again. You know, like I said, just listen to Nick Drake, Pink Moon, 5 Leaves Left. Just get Fruit Tree by Nick Drake. It's the best hit of folk you can get. That's the best one. One that I really like at the moment is Giles Corey. He's basically like the lead writer of Have a Nice Life, I believe. You know, Deaf Consciousness is like a masterpiece. So, you know, having Giles Corey is pretty great. He's pretty like gloomy, dark singer-songwriter. Like you could expect with Have a Nice Life, but I like the more singer-songwriter oriented style that Giles goes for. It's a lot more my vibe, a lot more my groove. Bob Dylan, he just doesn't connect with me personally. And that's my opinion. Yeah, we have another hard hitter. What's Going On by Marvin Gaye. This is probably like the lowest rated album I have on there, like 1.5. It's really just an album that bores me. It puts me to sleep. All the songs sound the same, and Marvin Gaye sounds a bit too preachy for me. Like, I don't think that's like praying or saying, you know, praying to the Lord or something. I'm not against religion or something. You know, not to make this a religious video, but I just, you know, I'm an atheist personally. I just don't understand why you would believe. You know, just, it sounds cheesy, but just believe in yourself and in your community, in the people around you. Just put your trust in them, you know, because they're actually there, and you know they're there for you to support you. So just trust in that. Just trust in that feeling. Why would you, you know, trust a guy up there? Like, I'm not going further than that. That's just kind of my opinion, you know, as an atheist, but I just don't understand why you would be like preachy and all this kind of religion kind of type and be big into what's going on. I just don't get it. It sounds really like cookie cutter, predictable, cheesy, kind of a cliche of the 70s, you know, to sound like this. And I think Marvin Gaye gets heralded to this high regard because he's a good singer and he just has a message. And I think that's probably the reason why this album is as beloved as it is. Because whenever I put it on, it just really puts me to sleep. And that's not to say that I hate soul music. I actually really like soul music. You know, the Love Deluxe by Sade, I think, is a fantastic soul pop album. I like Funkadelic, like I said. And obviously Stevie Wonder is great. You know, Stevie Wonder is a legend in and of its own. And he is fantastic. Like, if you do not like Stevie Wonder, what's wrong with you? You know, most people would say the same thing for me with Marvin Gaye. Like, if you don't like that guy, what's wrong with you? I do understand, but I just don't really like him. Erykah Badu, also pretty good. D'Angelo, great vocalist. Lauryn Hill, classic. Sade, great. And, you know, this album is just a masterpiece. like S. What else is on there? S. Sir Duke, obviously, another star. Isn't She Lovely, I think, is on there. Yeah, that song is fantastic. I mean, if you listen to this album, you just get happy. Like, a similar album that really puts me in a good mood is an album called Since I Left You by the Avalanches, because it's just this constant hit of like summer-esque dance disco tunes that are just really upbeat and happy sounding. So it's just an album that makes me happy, and it's like dense and weird. So it interests me and it makes me happy. So the Avalanches are just like the greatest shit ever. That's why I really like that band. And Stevie Wonder, he might be less dense, he might be less experimental than the Avalanches, but he still makes really upbeat, fun soul music that if you hear this album, it puts you in a better mood. If this album doesn't uplift your spirit, there's something wrong with you. This album is such a fucking masterpiece. I gave it a 3.5. Well, fuck me, I'm gonna give it a 4.5. Nearly a 5. This album is so good. It's so fucking good. So I do like soul music. I swear, I like this shit. I like good soul music. Okay. So yeah, that's hopefully that's enough convincing. And if you don't, I don't give a shit. To be honest, I just really like Stevie Wonder. Marvin Gaye, it never clicked for me. Then we have another one, or another country album. This is kind of similar in the vein of Black Country, but this is a bit more in the country direction. You know, just like an actual like hit of country, because this is on top of the country chart, and it's even above Towns Van Zandt, Johnny Cash, and my favorite, Marty Robbins. Yeah, I really like his Trill Songs album with the Big Iron. You know, I just really got into like some old school outlaw country, and that's definitely like my favorite type of country music, like that really old school outlaw classic country. That's actually really good country, so I would recommend that if you want to get into that kind of music. It was my least favorite genre for a really long time, but then I discovered Marty Robbins and Towns Van Zandt, and I just kind of became a fan. So that's why I like certain mixes of country, but you know, I just never really got into alt country, like songs Ohio. There are some albums before this where they were more alternative indie that I like better. And then I heard this and I was just kind of like, it's boring, it's tedious, it sounds kind of sad, you know, like the cover. Like this dude sounds like he's crying like 24/7. Like this dude just has like constant breakups or something, or he's just constant in a sad mood. It's just a lot. So I don't understand why you would listen to this, because it just sounds really sad and really depressing. And I don't really want to listen to music for that. You know, I wanted to uplift my spirits, like the Stevie Wonder album. That's great music. This, not so much. Yeah, obviously, this album, I don't get this band. Even the first album that I would say is better. It just kind of sounds like a noisy, shitty indie kind of post rock album. I just really hate the sound. And like you can see from my rating, I absolutely despise this album because it's like whiny, pretentious indie garbage that just kind of comes through you. It just sounds really unengaging. His voice is like nails on the chalkboard to me. Like he has insufferable vocals, and the things they say about like Anne Frank and sperm, like I didn't really read that deeply into it, but basically just watch your favorite band sucks, tear this band apart because they're just awful in my opinion. And they kind of go full depth about the whole Anne Frank story, but basically they are kind of obsessed with her, and they're kind of talking about how they would like to see her or something, or she has this like illusionary kind of vivid plating, and somehow that involves sperm. You know, it's disgusting, it's vile, it's just really perversive. I just don't really get why you would read that deeply into it. I just heard those two words, or I heard and the liquid, and I was just disgusted. Like, why would you write about that? It's so creepy and gross. This album cover also is dumb as fuck. Like the mother of this, this little boy's mom. His mom is like a fucking coconut. Like, literally. Like, what even is that? Is that a percussion or something? Like, the album cover is. I wanted to say the R word. I don't think I can say that now. This album cover is dumb. That's what I want to say. It's dumb. It's unintelligent. Maybe there's a deeper meaning in it, but if there is, okay, cool. It still looks. I can't even talk straight when seeing this cover. Even if it has a deeper meaning, the album cover still looks like shit. There you go. I will admit that the first 3 songs are kind of fine. The King of Carrot Flowers is fine. In the Aeroplane Over the Sea, the song itself is pretty listenable. But beyond that, you would be a fool to continue to listen to this, because this is unlistenable garbage to me. In my opinion. Yeah, this is the final album for me. I don't hate this as much as, the fucking Neutral Milk Hotel. I don't hate this band. Neutral Milk Hotel is the only band on this list that I actually hate. Yeah, and Black Country I just heavily dislike, I guess. Kind of hate as well, but they sound too meandering and pointless to really call or to really hate on. Yeah, Neutral Milk Hotel is the only one that I really hate. And Fishman's, I kind of like Burial. Like, it bores me, but Burial is like pretty acclaimed. And Fishman, I wanted to end on Fishman's because Fishman's are gods on radio music. So this is, in my opinion, the most overrated album I've ever heard on this entire website. Like, I've heard Beatles albums that are boring, but this takes the cake. And, I would say that I would rather listen to Fishman's because the Beatles are just really boring and dull, in my opinion. But Fishman's is a band that they are halted for basically playing a psychedelic ambient loop for 40 minutes long. And that's why they are highly regarded on this website. That's the reason. And every time I put this on, I'm kind of like, it's pleasant. It's nice. It's dreamy. You hear it. It's kind of sleepy time music, so it's not bad for those situations. But even then, I got Have a Nice Life. I got Giles Corey. And, when I look up Dream Pop, easily the best band in that genre is Slowdive. Like, Slowdive is the best dream pop band. Or, My Bloody Valentine, if you consider them that. They are the best. Like, even Cocteau Twins is better. So Flocky is a masterpiece. Just listen to Slowdive. That's the best band. Sweet Trip. Not my favorite from them, but it's fucking Sweet Trip. Sweet Trip is better. Julie Cruz is a better vocalist. I don't necessarily care for that album, but she's definitely a better singer, that's for sure. So basically, if Julie Cruz sang on Fishman's, or if Rachel Goswell from Slowdive sang on Fishman's Long Season, it would probably be a really pleasant album to listen to. But you have like these like Japanese, like white, whiny boys, from Fishmans that are like whining over this, and I'm just kind of like, why do people like this? It's so slow, tedious, and nasally. You know, it's a current theme with my albums that I can get into is mainly because of the vocals. Because if this was pure instrumental, I might even call this good. But it's literally almost on the top chart of the entire website, and it's considered the #1 live album of all time. Like, there's nothing better than this, according to Rage Music. And I'm like, it's not bad. It's not a bad album. I don't mind to put it on when I sleep, but holy shit, it's really not that good. Like, why is it so highly regarded? Like, I don't get it. Like, stop making sense. I've actually seen in the movie theaters, and it's 1,000 times better than Fishman's. Like, Talking Heads kicks your virtual, digital, and literal ass. And your vocals kind of sound like ass. You know, that was kind of obvious, but yeah, Talking Heads infinitely better. Swans are that. I mean, it's more interesting than Fishman's, that's for sure. King Gizzard obviously is more interesting. Jeff Buckley live is pretty great. Alice in Chains, not a huge fan of that album, but it's still more engaging than Fishman's. Life After Death by Maiden. I mean, not a huge Maiden guy, but that sound is amazing, obviously. Zeppelin live, great, of course. Dylan live, not so great. Electric Mazda, I think, is pretty underrated. Not an album that I would actively seek out, but a pretty good hit of avant-garde jazz, I would say. Prince live, obviously, legend. This Portishead album is amazing. That sounds pretty great. King Crimson, obviously great. What else do we got? More King Gizzards, Nirvana sucks. Daft Punk Alive, I would say, is pretty good. Yeah, and then Talking. I mean, there's so many better live albums that you can listen to over this. But the video is already 40 minutes long. I didn't think I would make it this long, but these are just some albums that I couldn't get into. That I'm just kind of like, why do people like this? If you want to explain to me why these are good albums, then you can, leave your comments in the comment section down below. Please don't make it like an entire paragraph of reasons why you adore it. If you just give me some basic handouts, some basic observations that basically anyone could get into the album, then you wouldn't only help me, but you will help anyone that reads your comments. So if you make it like, pristine, concise, just go to the straight, direct reasons why you would recommend these albums, then more people would understand you and more people would engage with your music. So you wouldn't only help me, but everyone around you. But that's just, that's just a tip. You don't have to do that. Engagement is already good. So if you leave anything behind, it already creates engagement. So do what you want. Thanks regardless for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, well, you know what you can do, to help me. I wouldn't even say it because it's just too obvious at this point. But thank you for watching. These were my albums that I just can't really get into or understand. I am working on like a favorites list, so I'll definitely show you that when it's done, when I've done all my band reviews. But until then, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.